Here at Darts, it's become a lockdown tradition to send Coach Dave out on the mats to do a workout video. For lockdown 1, almost exactly 1 year ago, we did a video with a skipping rope, slam balls and standard weights, the type you can buy at Argos. For lockdown 2, it was a wet November day and a resistance band workout. We'll link to both of those in the description. Well, we've sent Dave back out on the mats for lockdown 3. It's a cold March morning for more strength training. So here we are, Olympic bar loaded on the rack. Let's dive in. For our older athletes, all of this will look pretty familiar. We're starting with back squats, 5 sets, 5 reps. Strength training the way I like to do it, and the way I like to get our athletes doing it, pretty much centres around the concept of movement patterns. The 6 basic movement patterns are shown on the left. They're simply the way our bodies move. You'll see them in action as we go through the video, but try to match each pattern with as many everyday movements as you can. The squat is obviously your basic sitting movement. It's a solid base for jumping or diving, and if you're a swimmer, pushing and gliding around walls. Before having an athlete perform a loaded back squat with an Olympic bar, like I'm doing here, or in fact any of the lifts performed on this video, we would put them through a number of years of progressive strength development work first. In the case of squats, we would have our young athletes become proficient in a variety of body weight variants, such as those shown on the right, and then extend that with the use of med balls and kettlebells for goblet squats and the like. In those early development years, we look to instill good technique. Think about your stance, your back position, your head position, and the depth of your squat. You'll notice my hips sink well below knee height for full glute engagement. We call that breaking the parallel referring to an imaginary line drawn from your knees through to your hips at the lowest point of the squat. So to maximise your gains, be sure to get your hips lower. Practice bodyweight squats in front of a mirror, or video yourself like I'm doing here. Make sure your hips are breaking that parallel. This is actually the first time I've seen myself perform squats on video, so it's quite a relief to see how deep I'm getting here. This can be quite a tricky depth to achieve without some form of immediate feedback. So if you can't see yourself in a mirror, or film yourself on a phone or something, use a box of the right height and keep squatting deeper and deeper until you're sitting on the box. We also see young kids leaning too far forwards with their upper body, often the boys for some reason. It's a hard habit to get them out of because at a young age they see no consequence to it. Of course, if they were to continue with that technique as they get older, putting a bar on their back would see them face plant the floor. So try to keep that back upright or diagonal as much as possible. Certainly 1 or 2 of my later reps struggle to hold that posture. You can occasionally see my hips rising before my back lifts the bar, so that's something for me to work on. But any of you young guys watching this, make sure you get your bodyweight squat technique as polished as possible before we start adding load. Just a quick word on safety, because like I tell every athlete that I take in the gym, weight training is a very effective method of injuring yourself. I'd rather my swimmers not go in the gym until they've been in with me, but equally I appreciate that they often do so at school or with their friends, and the safety side might not be adequate. So as we go through each of these lifts, I'll just point out 1 or 2 key points. Obviously, I'm doing these squats in a power rack, and with good reason. You don't want to slip or fall with a loaded bar on your back. You'll notice a couple of inches below my lowest point, there are 2 black safety bars running front to back through the uprights. If I slip or fall, they will catch the bar and prevent it smashing into my back or my neck or my head should I end up on the floor. Whenever I have someone new in the gym, I always make them practice a failed lift, so they're confident releasing the bar onto the safeties if they can't complete it. If you don't have access to a rack, I would strongly recommend sticking to body weight or goblet squats. It doesn't take much for a back squat to become dangerous. The next movement pattern is the vertical press. With the barbell, we're going to do this as a shoulder press, but just like with squats, there are lots of progressions for the younger athletes before exposing them to this one. Again, medicine balls, kettlebells, even resistance bands can introduce the vertical press for younger athletes. Unusually, the only bodyweight variant I've come across is even harder to perform than this one with the bar, but it is a lot more fun. So a few years ago, the Danish swim team took part in English nationals, and their dry land warm-up involved handstands and handstand press-ups. Essentially the same vertical press as I'm doing with the bar, but inverted to use body weight as the resistance. There's also a lot of core strength, balance and coordination involved in handstands. But imagine, I'm just about managing a shoulder press set here with 47.5 kilos. Those guys performing handstand press-ups on the pool side were pressing their entire body weight, which would have been 80 kilograms plus. Now that is something to aim for. You'll notice that it isn't just my shoulders that are involved in this press. All of these lifts are big compound movements. They involve a chain of muscles working together and supporting each other. We're not isolating a specific movement, we're trying to strengthen the entire body as a unit. So the vertical press movement obviously works against a resistance when pushing your arms up above your head. A horizontal press, by contrast, works against resistance as you push your hands forwards from your chest. The orientation of your body is largely irrelevant. We're only interested in the direction of effort. So a horizontal press is the same movement pattern whether you're performing a press up, throwing a ball with a chest pass, performing a bench press as shown here, or you're just pushing a kitchen appliance back underneath the countertop. And like all the other movements, there's a progression that I like to follow. That progression mostly centres around various press-ups, which again brings us back to the big compound movements. It's not just the chest muscles being used in a press-up, it's most of the body as it's essentially lifting and lowering a plank position. Often in the early days, a weak press-up fails to hold that body line. You'll see the shoulders rise, but the hips stay close to the floor. So we progress from knee press-ups to full press-ups, and while we do that, we're learning to activate the muscle groups responsible for holding that plank-like posture. Once you're approaching double figures for well-executed press-ups, we can progress to different variations to add a little challenge. I'll list a few of those variants on the screen. Now, to take press-ups to a whole new level, I've recently introduced gymnastics rings. They add an element of instability and an even greater challenge for athletes. Most of the movement patterns described here in this video can also be performed with gymnastics rings, and we've done a separate video to cover those. Bench pressing with the bar would represent the pinnacle of that progression, but it's a step-by-step process towards that level. It's not the end goal, it's the end of the progression. Earlier on we mentioned safety while squatting. Once again, I'm performing bench press inside the rack. I'm lifting close to 80 kilograms. If I were to drop that on my face or on my neck, it's pretty much game over. You don't come back from that. Dropping it on my chest might be survivable, but I doubt my rib cage would enjoy it. Those safety bars are there to catch the barbell. If you don't have a rack, you need a spotter, or probably more than one. I certainly wouldn't volunteer on my own to spot someone benching 80 kilograms. Again, when I take athletes into the gym, I teach them how to spot for each other properly and safely. It's worth highlighting that in the swimming pool, most injuries are caused by repetitive movements over many months. By contrast, in the weights room, a lack of concentration can finish a swimming career in a heartbeat. Something as simple as a careless twist can leave you with a bad back for life. Next up on our list of movement patterns is the hip hinge. If you've done any manual handling course at work, you'll be familiar with this one. It's the natural mechanics for your body to lift a heavy load off the floor safely. In the gym, we employ the hip hinge pattern when we perform a deadlift, which is more than likely the heaviest load you'll work with in the weights room. For me, that's currently about 105 kilograms. I can deadlift significantly more than that, but, and here's another of those safety announcements, whenever I squat or deadlift close to my max, I end up taking a week or so out with back problems. So I prefer to build up at quite a slow rate, but lift more frequently and avoid annoying injuries. Lifting the heaviest weight possible isn't my primary objective, and it shouldn't be the primary objective for a swimmer either. That objective should be swimming faster. Strength training supports that objective, but injuries have a serious negative impact, so be sure to avoid them. Don't be in a rush. Despite squatting and deadlifting some way below my maximum capability, I'm still making solid progress in terms of strength and size gains. The reason for mentioning that is to highlight that weight training is a very effective way of injuring yourself. It offers advantages, but it isn't entirely clear how beneficial those advantages are for swimming faster. Having spoken to successful senior coaches throughout the UK, it appears there's a pretty even split between those who do weight training and those who don't. But all of them appear to do the familiar body weight progressions, with the addition of resistance bands and med balls. Now you may be wondering what any of these movement patterns have to do with swimming. You can make tenuous claims for squats helping push and glides, but you'd be struggling for a direct movement match between swimming and the horizontal or vertical press, for example. But that's not really the point. We're not trying to isolate swimming strength. We're trying to develop generally athletic, strong bodies. By utilising the body's standard movement patterns, the way they're supposed to move, and loading those compound movements, we build a generically strong body. That strength should be applicable in the pool, but it's also equally useful for every other aspect of your life. And because all of your body has been involved in each of those compound lifts, every part of your body is strong enough to work with or support the rest of your body. I also firmly believe that swimmers, or any athlete at the level we work with at darts, should be confident to walk into a gym and know what they're doing with the equipment. Next up, we have the horizontal pull. As the name suggests, it's the reverse movement to the horizontal press. To achieve that, we'll use a rowing action to pull the bar off the floor and into the body, using the arms, the shoulders and the back. You might notice this variant also engages the glutes and hamstrings to maintain posture. So once again, we're looking at a big compound movement. There are many other ways to perform a row: sitting down, lying down, standing up, you name it. My personal favourite bodyweight method uses gymnastics rings, but more on that in a different video. And finally we come to the vertical pull. I forgot to film this on the day, so just for completeness we'll let Blaine do the demonstrations. You can do this as pull-ups with the palms facing away from you, or as chin-ups with the palms facing towards you. It's better to do a mixture of each, but swimmers probably get more benefit from pull-ups as they emphasise back strength more. It should be easy to find a goalpost or something to use for this, but gymnastics rings allow the height to be changed. That's important because this is a really tough exercise to start with, and that puts people off. By lowering the rings, we can start athletes in a sitting position and use the legs to reduce the load as they pull up. Such regressions are important as they allow younger athletes or weaker athletes to get started. From there, they can gradually progress to full body weight vertical pulls.